How's it going, guys? And this is another hot take. I think it's the last relevant one that's up at the minute, but I'll keep an eye on them because they're alright to add my thoughts to. They're not bad. So, we've got the 2019 tin promos. These were big. Definitely no understating that. They were and are influential cards, and one of the three at all points since they've been released that I can think of has been relevant. I think these were fantastic for the game. A little bit biased because I was playing Gren for the majority of Shifter's lifespan, and now that I am not playing a deck that directly benefits from Shifter, or ever since I've come off Gren, I've been hyper aware of the card and purposely built around it. With the exception of Mathmech, I'm very aware that I can OTK with it through Shifter, and a reasonable amount of interaction. Getting it dropped on you going first kind of sucks, and you kind of just you have to deal. It is what it is. But it's about a match, not a game. So, the hot takes is the 2019 tin promos, as we said. Totally overhauling the original Megatin design, the 2019 gold sarcophagus tin resolved basically all the issues of this kind of product had before. It also introduced 3 cards that have changed the game forever. But have they changed the game for the better? Opinions vary. Here's one. So, really quick, that tin was a banger. I don't think we've had a tin as good as it since. The ratios, I think, were statistically the worst on the most recent tin, and just the rarity slots and whatnot. So, you know, take that as you will. But yeah, this is, in my opinion, one of the best products that has been released. Off the back of it, we've always gone in heavily on tins, purely based on the fact that they're normally a home run. The trilogy is now ended with the last set of Megatins, so we don't know what the product's going to look like in the future. Everything before it, I'm far less aware of because of a gap in play. But let's get into it. 2 monsters, 1 spell, 2 hand traps, 1 board breaker. That's all it took to make some of the best cards in recent years. Nibiru the Primal Being, which we're all aware of. Summon 5 times, get your world rocked. Dimension Shifter, turns the graveyard off, everything gets banished, it's a macro and a hand trap. Dark Ruler no more. It says nope to a board, essentially. There's some stuff in it it's not completely unrespondable. Neither Shifter, neither's Nibiru. I think Nibiru now has the most counterplay. So anyway, have been staples throughout tens of thousands of deck lists ever since their day of release, revealed during the 2019 World Championship. These cards set the community ablaze, redefining power creep forever. I don't think they redefined power creep. They gave counterplay to very specific issues at the time. With the exception of Shifter, Shifter has aged the best. It is the fine wine of the promos. By that I mean everyone thought it was piss vinegar before that. So yeah, in the writer's opinion, one of the biggest mistakes in card design ever. I disagree. Originally thought to be the weaker of the 3, it is arguably the strongest one in our current Elements Shizu format. This article was written a touch before. It's probably the most oppressive right now, maybe. Because now the top deck abuses it. Although I think Branded might low-key be the top deck, but we'll see. Time will tell. Dimension Shifter. Originally thought to be the weaker of the three, it's arguably the strongest in our current format. We've just read this. This hand trap has a really steep activation requirement. Asking you to send it to the graveyard as a cost isn't much, but doing so while having no other cards there really limits the amount of decks capable of utilizing it. No. That's the same as trying to open any staple 3 of. Your problem is the decks at the time that could utilize it without crippling themselves just as badly were way more limited. I think you were looking at Grenmardew and maybe some control decks, but a lot of control still likes to play out of the grave. Okay. Just catching back up to where I was. Still, with such a steep cost, the effect lives up to it acting as a macrocosmos for 2 turns. Lingering effects, like this one, are a huge card design mistake. Now, there is something with Shifter. There are certain effects where, for example, if cards are detached under an Xyz material, they'll go to grave because they didn't leave the field. Shifter is a blanket statement. Anything that would go to the grave does not. Anything that would go to the grave is banished instead. Widely used on different floodgates, making it so you cannot interact with this sort of back-breaking effect once it's resolved really causes games to be a lot more unfun. Artifact Scythe, Lancia, and more recently Abyss Dweller are badly designed cards, period. Don't have an out to the exact moment at the exact moment the effect can be interacted with, well, sucks to be you, and Shifter works exactly like these. There's lingering effects can be rough. So for the same reason that Shifter is strong, Lancia is a little different. Lancia is more balanced, I would say. Or it's balanced in different ways. So Lancia, you're usually banishing as cost for effects and whatnot. And if your deck revolves around that, that's pretty rough. But it is for your opponent's turn only, so you can't insulate yourself with Lancia. And Abyss Dweller, I would say Abyss Dweller and the newly released Grave Shutdown. They're really strong, but it's a wider array of things that are abusing the grave. So, you know, take it as you want. Scythe is rough. Most things use the extra deck. Scythe getting as accessible as it did was getting a bit silly. Was getting out of hand. The ban arguably came a little bit late. But yeah, I can see why Scythe went. So yeah, not having the out, that's with a lot of things. If you're not over prepared, for example, any walking macrocosmos, you're gonna have a bad time. Shifter just acts differently. It's not a static thing that is on the field that you can handle. It's something that lingers. So, lingering effects are a blight on the game, and the strongest ones have already been banned. I think we read an article, depending when it was released, or maybe in the future, arguing for a lot of stuff to come back. Lingering effects, pretty rough. I would say As a Thought is really up there. That's a good example. And Max C can just rest in piss forever. Just don't come back. Please no, Max C. I don't need to tell you how strong banishing all cards for a turn for 2 turns is, especially if your own deck doesn't care about it. That's the thing. A lot did. When it was released, even now, I can think of Flunder, which aren't too bothered. And I can think of, obviously, Cashed Hero, which can benefit. It turns their extenders off to an extent, I believe, but not that up on it yet. I will be, but not right now. So, you were looking at Grenmarju, or Stun, or something like that. Grenmarju was pretty... I've got a soft spot for it, but I'm never going to say it was really up there. The problem is when you get meta decks abusing this. All the meta decks prior couldn't. It hurt you as much as it hurts your opponent, which is how it was balanced, because it's 2 turns, not 1. So yeah, and it's no secret that the reason Flunderies and Sprite can compete in this tier 0 format is because of Dimension Shifter. Yeah, kinda. Compete's a stretch. If you're looking at the duration of a YCS, you have to open it every game, and you probably want to be going first. You can't brick in that environment where it was full power to Rashizu. Compete, it was still tier 0. The representation wasn't there for the other two to sway it into a regular format. A staple 3 of is not enough in a long tournament. Cheap wins is all the card achieves. Pretty much an auto win button in certain matchups, like a bunch of floodgates. Yeah. There's a whole lot of stuff that auto wins. It can go really obscure if you're playing Plunder Patrol and you're playing a mono-type win deck. You are going to have a bad time just by the nature of the deck builds. Give us a win ship, please. Griffin is not a ship. It was. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. If someone can slam down Necro Valley on you, which wasn't relevant for years, it can cripple you. But without floodgates, I don't know how the game would be. Then you're talking about like an entire game of just single interaction. So who knows? But that's not the world we live in. So you can argue it for any. They all get the formats. It can also be used going second, unlike most auto win floodgates. I mean, they have counterplay. It's there. There's simply little to no playing around it. If you have it, you have it. A truly skillless card. This skill thing is it's a different conversation, but I'm sick of hearing it at this point, to be honest, where it's like, oh, such a body just no skilled, and it's like they won a high-tiered tournament and there was a bunch of people doing the same thing. There's probably an element of skill. There's also a lot of luck, but there's so much variance in this game. Everything isn't just no skill. There's lower skill requirements. I get it. But it's not just that. You have to secure the game, which can be a difficult ask. You can put your opponents in some really, really grim situations and they can claw it back. I don't think such thing as just an auto win. Unless you're, open exodia in your opening hand. Good luck. And then we get on to... Oh, no, no, no. No, we don't. Where is it? Used in truly skillless deck like Flunder. Do you know what? Flunder's still got Shifter. Now it doesn't have Barrier. Super fun. Really cool. And it's not auto-winning right now. It's not tiered. Really, as far as I'm aware. We're very early in the format at the time of recording. Flunder just got cool. And that was Barrier that was causing the issue. Not Shifter in that specific instance. Dart Ruler. The one that received the second most attention on release, Dart Ruler No More, asks a question. How far are you willing to go in order to play? The spell is useless going first, but going second, oh boy, you're in for a treat. There's a reason Super Polymerization is a strong card, and a big part of that has to do with your opponent not being able to respond at all. While not as crippling, Dart Ruler No More, being able to completely ignore your opponent's Borrowload Savage and Baron de Fleur is a strong point. Right, I feel like something was missed. You can counter trap it. You can negate it. You just can't negate it with a monster effect. There's even cards. I think the only one that I can think of is the Mermail equip. So it's really niche. But you never know. Stuff gets printed. New things come out. These can't be responded to cards are really difficult to get around. But there are circumstances where they can be stopped. Rare, and far more common in the case of Dart Ruler, where you can just hit it with a counter trap and you're fine. Which used to be a very common thing in decks, but yeah. Dart Ruler has come in and out of main and sideboards ever since released. It's release. It's late. It's late and I'm tired. Always at the back of a player's minds whenever a deck went a bit too far in board building department. However, it comes with a downside. You can't inflict damage. This is a pretty well balanced aspect of the card, making it so you have to break their board no matter what. Dark Ruler forcing you to be able to go off and combo makes it better in combo and mid-range decks, but not as good in control decks, which wouldn't need the card anyway. But no, control decks are surprisingly good at going second without blowouts. If you like blowouts. An unexpected side effect of the card's interactions with Mystic Mine and Divine Arsenal AA Zeus. Going second against an established board, these cards are stop on sight for the dominant player. The ability to blank an entire front row of monsters allows for even more blowout cards to skip through and completely swing the pace of the game in one's favour. Still, out of these three, it feels like the fairest. I don't know. It can be counter trapped. It's evenly if you're doing a full board break that can't be responded to by monster effects specifically. Like I can say, you can counter trap it, which has been in an archetype trend. It depends how you deck building. I mean, back in the day, you could even Curious Send, Order, Griffin, Recur Order, no Dark Ruler. There were ways. But it is awkward. It's just decks are built a little different right now. When it came out, I think it was very board buildy. It was solving a problem, which at the time Shifter wasn't, so it got the least attention. Shifter was just giving an edge to decks that could abuse it, and there weren't really any prominent ones. The evening out the game state was kind of a big thing. Right now, you're not dealing with a lot of onboard negates, so you're even favoring stuff like Book of Eclipse, and you even have Kashtira specifically playing Ash Blossom to negate Book of Eclipse, because you can ash it because it says draw on it, and you don't care about them responding with monster effects because they don't put up the negates. It's pretty different. Anyway, Nibiru. And now we've got the elephant in the room. Big Rocky Boy. Nibiru the Primal Being reads like a custom card. 5 summons cause the extraterrestrial beast to strike down your opponent's board, removing it all and replacing it with a large, useless token. Nibiru's probably got the most counterplay out of any of them. It's good. It's threatening. It's a head game. A lot of decks can put up a negate. Back when it released, you were putting up a negate on 5, probably with Apo. Now, you can chuck a negate out really soon with a lot of decks and just say no. You can also do stuff like the Ibly Lock, which has come back into favour. There is a lot of counterplay. This is not the biggest bad out there. And again, it was solving a problem. Just going off and comboing with no regard. Like, if you could play through hand traps, or particularly in times where hand traps weren't readily available, and Ash Blossom cost a fortune, so did Imperm. All these staples we now take for granted. This came in a tin, and it threatened it. And it was, you know, you might have it, you might not. But sometimes those boards were literally unbreakable. I remember it was a really obscure one. I swear I've got to get Monster to profile it at some point just as callback. We literally called it Yes because it used everything. But he would end on like Christia, Appaloosa, Last Warrior, Dingesu, UCT, and it was hyper consistent. He went through a couple of Sayujas doing it. I remember way back in the day, Tom judgmented one of his Sayujas, and he was like, oh, wow, really good judgment. Anyway, and then proceeded to build the board anyway. Oh, it ended on Colossus as well. The deck was cracked. And it wasn't unheard of at the time. His variant was pretty obscure. But throwing out Azathoth in your opponent's turn, stuff like that. There were a lot of things. Instant fusioning into Millennium Eyes. There's a lot of insulation. And a lot of really strong combos that could just combo forever. So Nibiru, yeah, it's really strong. It's really good head game. Kind of without misrepresenting the game state, because don't do that. It's bad. Never say you have it when you don't. And probably don't let on that you definitely have it when you do. It is something that will weaken those boards just by it being commonly played in a format, because people will be looking to play around it. They're not going to be playing into things with no regard. So I think it's kind of a net positive. And I just got nibbed twice on the last stream in a row. Anyway, yeah. Nibiru immediately shaped the format around it. Ever since its release, this giant space rock has checked the viability of all decks. Check the viability is a bit strong. damn, that's a pretty cool hero combo, ending on Dark Claw and Acid setup. Would be a shame if it was Rocco Clock. I like the rhyme. Rocco Clock now. While the card phases in and out of viability, very much so. But it's a staple most of the time, in brackets. No, it's not. No. Fast neg combos. It's a liability. I am not that hot on it right now. I am umming and ahhing on it because of the E block. Can't afford to have a dead card in your hand right now. Being able to play through, negate, or just ignore Nibiru is necessary for any deck trying to be competitive. No, it is not, because it weaves in and out of formats. And it is not a staple most of the time. This might be a wild claim, but Nibiru feels like a modern Maxi. Your deck has to be built to play around it, or you're out of the format. No, because it might be out of the format. Or like, it's not right. There's big counterplays to it. Link Spider, link that token off and just carry on. There's also the fact they've just nibbed you, and they may well have gone through other interactions on the way there. They may well have unloaded, their board. You've neutralized it. You're climbing. They nib you, you've got a giant token, they have nib, which is on 3k. They have to be able to answer it. Otherwise, you're just going to turn that token to attack and then start going in. Or you might just be able to extend through it. It's possible. And being able to do that now, very much like it's not a mid-range deck thing. Mid-range decks might get hit significantly more than decks that just extend forever. It's not comparable to Maxi in my opinion. Maxi is, I don't have the answer for it. I straight up have to stop my combo. And more often than not, they're going hand neutral, because if they're maxing you, they will be maxing you at a point where you have committed to a summon anyway. So there, it's an upstart, which is not a bad card. It's at 1 for a reason. Maxi significantly stronger, and does warp formats around it. Your deck has to be built to play around it, or you're out of the format. Yes, it's a hell of a lot more balanced than the annoying level 2 Earth Insect, but it gatekeeps so many decks out of the game. Salmon Great, no it doesn't. Orcust, it's not Nibiru that's doing it. And Thunder Dragon were all removed from the game, at least until Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess came out. The Eternal format was Thunder Dragon Striker Salad Orcust. That's Thunder Dragon Orcust Striker Salad, actually, toss. It didn't suddenly be like Nibiru has released 3 of the 4 top decks are just out. They worked it out. And more recent decks like Exorcister or Virtual World got destroyed by Nibiru. Exorcister was doing fine. They might get nibbed now, but it wasn't in format when they were seen play. The latter played 2 True King of All Calamities just to force the Nibiru out. True King of All Calamities, way more oppressive than Nibiru. That would have just been like a neat way of playing it around, because they could really abuse Calamities. Calamities was ridiculous. Massive walking floodgate. A lot more widespread was Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess as the 5th summon, like I said earlier. And it became almost mandatory to play because it was fantastic. It's still pretty good. It's just that decks are leaning more into a mid-range playstyle with a varied board than just spamming monster effects. It was good all round. It wasn't mandatory because of Nibiru. It was really helpful. Did stop it. But yeah, Appaloosa being £100 card or $110 maybe, can't remember. That was because it was great. Just a generic Link 4 that said negate it as many times as you put material in. What's not to love? Appaloosa's still great. Less so. The impact of these promos have had the game have had on the we'll try this again. The impact of these promos have had on the game cannot be overstated. The game has been warping around them ever since their release, and it doesn't look like it's will ever change. Am I saying they should be banned? Nah, not really. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is an ever-changing game that requires consistent adapting from its players. Yes, things are brought out to check and balance things. You can't just let things run rampant and be unanswered, otherwise it'll stagnate. So these kind of game mechanics and cards that answer particular format issues, I hate the phrase necessary evil. I think it's just part of it. Still, I just think it would be a little bit more fun without these cards, especially Shifter. Be gone, Flunderies players. So, I mean, again, Shifter ain't doing it right now for Flunder. Strong, but unless you wanted a format that was literally tier, if you just wanted to sit there and watch more tier mirror matches than we already were, then you know what, Shifter was kind of needed last format. So yeah, we still don't see eye to eye on these hot takes. Maybe one day I'll read through it and go, yeah, that's right, I agree. But today isn't that day. So with that, like, comment, subscribe, tell your friends, hit the bell icon, watch our other stuff. There should be more of it coming out. Check out the live streams. We stream often. I'm not going to go through the schedule. You'll be able to see it on the channel. And while you're there, do all the other things I just said. With that, namaste fuckers. This has been a really long recording session. I'm going to bed. Have a great night.